What's up, book nerds? My name is Tara, and today I am going to do my January and February reading wrap-up. I didn't get back into BookTube quickly enough to do a wrap-up at the end of January, but that's okay because I've really only read like 8 books since then anyway, and several of those are academic books that are not as interesting to talk about here. So I'm going to combine these all and try to just kind of skirt over those academic books a little bit for you to cover everything I've read since the beginning of 2016. The first book I read in January that was to get me back in the school mode after Christmas break was Writing Your Dissertation in 15 Minutes a Day. And this title is a little bit misleading because it's really not telling you to write your dissertation in 15 actual minutes a day, but it does break down the dissertation writing process, and I found it very helpful for thinking about that I'm not just going to sit down and write 200 pages. I'm really going to be writing 600 words a day. Kind of like NaNoWriMo, but over like a year. Next, I read a book called Disclaimer by Renee Knight, and I picked this one up from a list of books that were supposed to be like Gone Girl, because even though I keep telling myself that these books are never going to live up to what Gone Girl was for me, and Gone Girl is what it is, I somehow keep finding myself reading these books. And this one ultimately was not Gone Girl. So what more can I say about it? It's a story about a woman who receives a book in the mail, and it's a sort of a thriller novel, and she realizes that she's the main character in the novel, and that the person who wrote this book is sending her a very clear message that they know what she did in the past because she's a dirty secret, and that they're going to try to possibly make this information public. So it's a 3-star read. I enjoyed it, but it's no Gone Girl. Next, I read The Troop by Nick Cutter, which I have a full review for. I will post a little link to that so that you can check that out if you want to know more about it. But basically, it's a massively disgusting, gross-out horror novel about a virus that takes over boys while they are camping on an island off of Prince Edward Island in Canada. So it's a horror novel, and I counted it as one of my books for the Book Riot Read Harder Challenge for 2016. I also read a book called Ethnography for Education for my dissertation because I am preparing to do an ethnography of BookTube. So that is still happening. I've been heavily working and writing and preparing and proposing and comprehensive examining for that, and this was another stage in getting to that point. Next, I read a book that I'd been putting off for a very long time because you know how when you really are excited about a book, you almost want to save it for the exact perfect moment, and then that ends up you can never find the perfect moment. Well, that was the case with I Crawl Through It by A.S. King, who is my favorite author. I got an arc of this book last spring, and then I fell off the reading train and didn't read it. And then I had a secret sister who sent this to me in the fall, and I finally got to pick it up in January, and it was everything I dreamed of and more. Though I will have to say, this novel is about 4 teenagers who are all dealing with some sort of major trauma in their life, and it is surrealist fiction. So it is very difficult to figure out what's happening at the beginning, but I promise if you are interested in YA that kind of pushes the boundaries of how you tell a story, this book is brilliant in the themes that it brings up and the way that it addresses feminism and just being an adolescent. And again, like high five to A.S. King because she's exceeded my expectations with this book. Next, I read a book that unfortunately failed to meet my expectations, and that was The Assassin Game by Kirsty McKay. I was expecting this boarding school novel about the game. If you ever played like Murder or Wink, where you walk around and one person's the murderer and you shake everyone's hand, and then eventually like somebody has to be killed and you have to figure out who the murderer is. It's a game we played at like church and camp and stuff growing up, and this game is taken to a whole new level at this boarding school on like this tiny island off the coast of England, and they play it over several weeks, and there's these high profile kills. They're all supposed to be very like staged and fake, but ultimately that, you know, we have a real sense of danger because people start to actually get hurt. I wanted this to be a thriller, like a great YA thriller, but again, as has happened so many times for me, YA thrillers ultimately disappoint me because YAs are not really capable of being in situations that are thrilling enough to write into a very good thriller novel. So this certainly has its place, but as long as your expectations aren't that it's really going to keep you on the edge of your seat. Next, I read a book for a paper that a friend and I are writing about YA novels featuring mental and physical illness, and it's called Because You'll Never Meet Me by Leah Thomas. It's a dual narrative story. So one character is allergic to electricity in the sense that electricity gives him seizures. So he has to live in a house in the woods away from everyone. He can't go to school. And he is now pen pals with a character that is in Germany who kind of has the opposite problem. He has a pacemaker in his heart. And so he has various other issues. He's blind. He doesn't call himself blind, but he's essentially blind. He doesn't have eyes. And they form a friendship through their letters, and they talk about the issues they face, even though because of the pacemaker and the seizures from electricity, they can never actually meet each other in person. We may not be able to use this for our paper because of a technicality that happens at the end of the book, but it is an award-winning book, and you may want to consider reading it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It's a very interesting representation of YAs with physical disabilities and illnesses. Okay, I lied. So actually there's 9 books because I forgot that I also read another book for my dissertation. It is Adolescence and Online Fanfiction by Rebecca W. Black. And no, not the Friday Rebecca Black. It's definitely an academic book. It reads more like it has a lot of citations and things in it, but it's a fascinating look at why adolescents go online and write fan fiction, how they're involved in those communities. And this is interesting when thinking about these are online communities where teens are writing stories, and I'm looking at online communities where teens read stories, so that's kind of how that connects to that. And finally, I finished The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which I have been reading for a year. And when I say reading for a year, I mean I started and then I just walked away from it and then finally picked it back up and just flew through the story. I will do a full review on that later because I think I have a lot to say on this story. But do know that I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I'm not of the camp that's like, oh my gosh, this book changed my life, blah, blah, blah. But I did think that it was very well written, and I see where the sort of Donna Tartt cult comes from. So I will have more to say on that more formally at a later date. So those are the 9 books that I read in January and February. Let me know if you have read any of these in the comments below. I'd love to talk about some of them. And, or if you want to read any of them or if any of them look interesting to you. And otherwise, as always, book nerds, thank you for watching. I will see you next time.